Hey everybody, I'm your guide and this is the 12th entry in a series of more than 150 entries where we'll look at the fascinating and often frightening monsters inscribed in our trusty monster manual. In each entry, we'll cover what's in the manual, but also other interesting tidbits I found in my travels. This companion series is meant to educate, entertain, and elevate your excursions into the more dangerous areas of the Forgotten Realms. Everywhere from the cemetery behind your local church to the 9 hells and everywhere in between. And even some places much more interesting. So come, join me, let's begin. Bugbears. While neither bug nor bear, these guys are born for battle and mayhem. Surviving by raiding and hunting, they bully the weak and despise being bossed around. But their love of carnage means they will fight for powerful masters if bloodshed and treasure are assured. Bugbears actually feature in the nightmare tales of many races, great hairy beasts that creep through the shadows as quiet as cats. It's said that if you walk alone in the woods, a bugbear is bound to reach out of the bushes and strangle you. And if you stray too far from the house at night, bugbears might just scoop you up and devour you in their den. And in one of the more fanciful stories, if a bugbear were to cut off your head, your soul would stay trapped inside and the bugbears would then use your head to magically command all the people you knew in life. These types of lurid tales have been around for ages, but there are some seeds of truth to be found in them. Bugbears do rely on stealth and strength to attack, and prefer to operate at night. They do commonly take the heads of enemy leaders, but are no more likely to eat people than humans are. Bugbears might attack lone travelers or wandering children, but only if they have something to gain from doing so. But all of that is just hearsay. Let's start from the beginning and discuss what we know about bugbears in the Forgotten Realms. Bugbears are a massive humanoid race distantly related to but larger and stronger than goblins and hobgoblins. These beasts resemble hairy, feral goblins that stand between 6 and 8 feet tall and weigh in at around 300 pounds. The name bugbear came about due to their noses and claws, which are similar to that of a standard bear. Your average bugbear will have what appears to be yellow to reddish-brown skin with brown or red hair. They also tend to have large, hairy, wedge-shaped ears, and eyes that can come in a variety of colors, from brown to yellow to even red. Bugbears, like other goblinoids, have a reputation for being rather dim-witted and brutish, and by all accounts this claim is not unfounded. In general, bugbears tend to have easily provoked tempers and are quite prone to rages. While there are some who overcome this flaw, I believe it's worth it to mention how this character trait isn't discouraged at all in bugbear society. In fact, it's practically a staple of it. However, there have been tales of a few bugbear who have risen from this type of behavior, though few and far between. Oftentimes in these cases, the motivation for the change of heart comes from the rewards earned through virtue, which in the long run were more pleasing than the short-term rewards that stem from evil behaviors. All of this leads me to believe that even if one were to come across a seemingly good or lawful bugbear, they probably aren't that way because of any deeply held virtues, but more so because the rewards have been more desirable this way. Anyhow, in regards to bugbear culture and society, most bugbears live in what would be considered family groups that operate much like gangs. The individuals in a group typically number fewer than a dozen and consist of siblings and their mates, as well as a handful of offspring and an elder or two. This group typically lives in and around a small enclosure, often in temperate mountainous regions. For example, a natural cave or an old bear den would serve quite nicely as the home for a family of bugbear, with supplementary dens elsewhere in its territory that it uses temporarily when it goes on long forays for food. And during good times, a bugbear gang is pretty tight-knit. These are times when the food is plentiful and the spoils of battle are enough for each member to feel like a king. During these times, its members will cooperate well when hunting, and work as a team when bullying other creatures. But sadly, as we know all too well, good times don't last forever. When the fortunes of the gang turn sour, the individuals instantly become selfish and might sabotage one another to remove any opposition, or even exile weaker, unpopular members to try and convince the rest of the gang that they're still strong. Fortunately for the race as a whole, even young and elderly bugbears have the ability to survive alone in the wild, and the cast-off members of a gang might eventually even catch on with another group. And left to their own devices, bugbears have little more impact on the world than wolf packs. They subsist by crafting simple tools and hunting and gathering food, and gangs sometimes come together peacefully to exchange members and goods between them. However, I found that bugbears become a much larger threat when they start to interact with other goblinoid races. Besides the families or gangs I just mentioned, bugbears are also found in the company of both goblins and hobgoblins. Bugbears oftentimes bully other goblinoids into giving them gold and food in return for serving as scouts and shock troops. But even when they're paid, bugbears are at best unreliable allies. And even still, goblins and hobgoblins will almost always be open to recruiting bugbears simply because of how potent they can be in battle. Their potency is relative, however, so when I talk about how useful they are in battle, I don't want any of you to think a bugbear will stand up to any form of dragon, beholder, or aboleth. Bugbears are potent when they're around other, lesser monsters. When they're walking among goblins, a bugbear can feel like a force of nature. They don't have any powerful spells they can cast, they aren't typically equipped with magical items, and they can't call down a column of fire from the sky. They can simply hit and be hit fairly hard. Now, I mentioned them being used as scouts and shock troops, which might come as a surprise to many of you, especially if you think back to earlier and recall just how big these brutes can be. Typically, you'd think a 7-foot-tall, 300-pound bugbear wouldn't exactly be a subtle hunter. But what surprised me the most while I was penning this entry is that these creatures are actually quite adept at stealth and survival. In fact, bugbears even have their own god of hunting, perception, and yes, stealth. And if a bugbear can get the drop on you, almost anyone would be hard-pressed to come out of that encounter alive. So I suppose that's where those tales of adults being snatched from the forest while walking alone come from. And since I mentioned a certain deity, we might as well touch on which gods these creatures worship, because there's a surprising amount of information regarding this topic, much more than I would have initially suspected. So to start out, bugbears worship two deities, and these deities are brothers. The first one is Rugek, and he would be considered the fearsome elder sibling possessed of legendary might and prowess in battle. And bugbears actually believe their strength and bravery comes from him. Then you have Grankul, the younger one. He's the bugbear's god of cunning and stealth. And in the stories they tell, he gifted them with their aptitude for stealth, but in return he sapped their vigor. According to the lore, this was so that bugbears will sleep for him while he remains eternally alert and awake, if that makes any sense. Now, I personally believe you can tell a lot about the mentality of certain creatures just by looking at the things they hold dear. In the bugbear's case, and according to their legends, their two deities often fight alongside each other, preying upon all they encounter. This alone speaks to how the bugbears view the world. They think that might makes right, and if you're strong enough and powerful enough, it's your right to prey on and subjugate weaker beings. Bugbears admire the qualities of both brothers. Because of Rugek, they consider bravery and physical superiority to be their natural state. Thanks to Grankul, they can use their size and strength to work as stealthy assassins rather than blundering around like ogres. Bullying, murder, and engaging in battle are all holy acts for bugbears. Murdering an unsuspecting creature and defeating foes in open battle are seen as acts of worship in the same way that dwarves consider metalsmithing to be sacred to Moradin. However, on that note, I think that brings us to the end of this entry. As with most entries, I found myself assuming it'd be short, but I'm almost always impressed by the amount of lore my colleagues have been able to gather regarding each of our subjects. I wouldn't have ever thought these 7-foot-tall brutes would ever be so adept at stealth and subterfuge, nor would I have ever guessed they'd have a surprisingly solid set of deities and a coherent worldview, despite it being rather simple. But regardless, here we are, and I hope you learned at least one thing from this presentation. Up next we have a creature known as the boulette, and I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever heard of this one before. So to say I'm excited to explore an entirely new topic might be an understatement. But until then, this is your guide signing out. Be safe, take care, and happy trails.